Lovely Chelsea updates. Yo, what's going on, friends, and welcome on back to Football Therapy with me, your host Jan. As always, I really do hope you're doing well, mate. Really do hope that, and welcome on back to Chelsea News, which is, of course, the daily series here on this YouTube channel where I reflect on what's being said across the internet about Chelsea Football Club. I give you my thoughts on it, but more importantly, as always, I ask for yours. And in today's video, we have a little update from Nizar Kinsella of the BBC, speaking about Chelsea's new stadium redevelopment. The 60,000-seater, is it coming? We'll see, we'll learn very shortly. Fabrizio Romano has spoken about how Chelsea prioritised Alejandro Garnacho over the likes of Morgan Rogers, who presumably would have cost double, maybe more. We'll speak a little bit about that, and indeed some quotes from Garnacho on joining Chelsea. And I want to finish talking about what Cy Phillips said on his Substack via the Chelsea Chronicle, which is a Chelsea aggregation news site thing, about Thiago Silva potentially joining Chelsea's coaching staff, which would be a lovely, warm, fuzzy feeling. There's a lot of ex-Chelsea players at the moment out there doing well. Of course, Frank Lampard absolutely tearing it up with Coventry, but we've already had him manage us a couple of times, let him go do his thing for a while, I'd say. But the likes of Cesc Fabregas and Thiago Silva, who wants to coach. Wow. It's gonna be a great video, I feel it within, yeah? My chakras are aligned. We're gonna have a nice time. So thank you for joining me, guys. Welcome on back. If you want to support the content, why not like and subscribe and hype up the video? You swipe on the comments and there's a hype button. You can drop your hype points, and apparently it helps me out, so thank you for doing that. Of course, I don't need to tell you, or maybe I do. We're very, very close to 200,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself coming back to the channel and you're not subscribed, you could be a difference maker. Yeah, you could be one of the ones who makes a difference. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. Let's hop into well, it's not nonsense, subscribe. Let's hop into the video and start off with the Stamford Bridge relocation or redevelopment question, and an update from Nizar Kinsella on the BBC. Right, good old Naz writes the following. We've had a lot of questions on whether or not there's any news about a new stadium or redevelopment plans for Stamford Bridge, and it was sent into our Ask About Chelsea form. So for the moment, there's no major update on the stadium, but Nizar explains why. It seems, for all intents and purposes, like Chelsea have been waiting to see if an opportunity emerges to take a 44-acre site just north of Stamford Bridge. Ooh, a new rumoured location. This plot of land is being billed as the last major development opportunity in central London, and whatever happens next will certainly focus minds at Chelsea. Currently, another company is building an Earl's Court development project, which does not feature a stadium. So is that Earl's Court off the table? Because that's what we were hearing, weren't we? It was the big battle of the ownership. Todd Bowley wanted to go to Earl's Court, or at least that's what we were being led to believe. Of course, the Chelsea pitch owners would have to agree to a relocation. A lot of Chelsea fans like the idea of Earl's Court. It's not too far away and they can do what they want in terms of building the biggest and best stadium. You know, maybe do a Tottenham Hotspur, build this amazing, basically, stadium that sounds really good atmospherically, that's got good access, that's got good features, whatever. But of course, going down the King's Road, Fulham Broadway, Stamford Bridge, it's the sacred home of Chelsea Football Club, and it's been there for a very long time. And a lot of Chelsea fans don't want to move. I understand that. So, they are in the final throes of securing planning permission from the two relevant London councils. If planning permission is granted, Chelsea will have their minds focused on the last, and probably only option, knock down their current stadium and rebuild a 60,000-seater stadium. Nizar goes on to say, what if this isn't granted though, you know, from the London councils? Could Chelsea hijack the site through their political connections on the board? That would open up a whole new can of worms, as the club would then need permission from the fans, of course the Chelsea pitch owners, to move Stamford Bridge away. Nizar anticipates major updates early in 2026, which is not far away now. Very, very interesting. Of course, it's a nice idea to redevelop Stamford Bridge on its current site. I think the vast majority of Chelsea fans would say, yeah, there needs to be something done. Of course, there's a split in the fan base upon, redevelopment and relocation, but if I was to speculate, I'd say maybe over 80% would say, yeah, for Chelsea to keep up with the likes of Arsenal, Man United, Man City, Tottenham, Liverpool, there needs to be an increase in the stadium capacity. So I don't think there's like a majority against that sentiment. But of course, people are torn with redevelopment and relocation. There'll be people that think, yeah, let's go to Earls Court, it's easier, it means it can be built. We stay at Stamford Bridge and go over there, but now maybe Earls Court, I guess, is is unavailable. But that kind of theory, there'll be people that say, oh, redevelop one stand at the time, which, different Premier League stadiums have done. But it's not the best way of doing it. It takes a lot longer. It makes your capacity even smaller at times, and it can cause loads of complications. And indeed, it can hamstring the final product. You can end up with not the best stadium that you wanted. You generally want to build that all together from the ground up. So Naz is writing here, essentially, that maybe the only option would be to knock down Stamford Bridge, keep it on the same, land and rebuild this 60,000 stadium. Of course, they've already expanded the site a little bit. I guess maybe there's that idea that, you turn the stadium around slightly with the extended land and go upwards. But we all know what that means. If we rebuild on the current site, it means we're going to have to play in a temporary stadium for years, up to 4 years. Which sounds mental, really. Does it take 4 years to build a stadium in this modern age, in big 2025, 26? I guess because of the location where it is in central London as well, it doesn't help. It's not like it's out on some estate site with loads of space next to A roads or a motorway where you can just get on. Because of where it is, it's probably quite tough. But what does that mean? It means you're probably going to move to Wembley or Twickenham. Fulham won't want to do a stadium share. I mean, that would be interesting because it's a lovely place to watch the football cottage, but that capacity is massively limited. And would they want to do that? I don't know. Anyway, there's your update from Nizar Kinsella on the stadium. Interesting that 60,000, stadium might be the only option to be built on the current site. Let me know your thoughts. Let's move on and speak about Alejandro Garnacho. So Fabrizio Romano was speaking about this recently. He was talking about Morgan Rogers, who of course found form for England and is playing a little bit better for his club Aston Villa now. He spoke about how Chelsea were looking at him in the summer. We know this. Chelsea, of course, were looking very closely at the likes of Morgan Rogers, Xavi Simons, these kind of players that aren't conventional wingers, that play a little bit more on the inside. But it turns out Chelsea preferenced Alejandro Garnacho. Now, we were chasing Garnacho for a long time. Remember the previous January as well, we were looking at Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo from Man United. Kobbie Mainoo is an interesting one. Chelsea have loads of midfielders, so I hope we don't prioritise midfielders moving forwards. I love Morgan Rogers. Had you probably said to me, pick one, they're both 50 million quid, pick one, I would have picked Morgan Rogers. But I totally understand if he had £100 million price tag on his head and Garnacho had a £40 million price tag on his head. It kind of makes sense, especially when you were always going to bring in Jamie Gittins. Now, Garnacho's recently been interviewed, done some quotes. He explained how he had a difficult time at Man United. We all know that, mate. You don't need to go into the details, but he spoke about coming to Chelsea. He wanted to come to Chelsea. He didn't reference him in Chelsea kits as a kid, those pictures that were circulating around social media, but he spoke about, of course, his international teammate Enzo Fernandez. I think he's got a good relationship with Enzo. He spoke to him all the time about coming to Chelsea, and rather interestingly as well, he had loads of video calls with Enzo Maresca, the Chelsea manager, to explain why he should come to Chelsea and how we'll utilise him and how we'll deploy him. Now, this is interesting and relevant to me because Alejandro Garnacho, since the January and then the summer when we bought him, to me, it screamed like a sporting hierarchy signing, like, oh, we want to get him in, it's a market opportunity. The football, no matter what, football fans' feelings are on Garnacho, the football industry at large, the scouting industry, they value Garnacho very highly and indeed his potential even higher. So there's a general consensus in the transfer market, industry that Chelsea got Garnacho at a cut price. Maybe not crazy cheap because of how much he was playing, at Man United, but maybe 10 million cheaper than they should have. He maybe should have cost 50 million. They got him for 40 million. It's an inflated market. Here's where we are. But the speculation, the thoughts, the predictions on Garnacho is he will be valued a lot more than that. Maybe, 60, 70, 80 million in like a year or so. That's the kind of thoughts on terms of his talent, his ceiling, his application, his, data that's been provided already. After playing, a few years in the Premier League, there's a big body of evidence there that you can sort of analyse and then, project forward and how he's going to be playing. But I did want to emphasise it's not just the sporting directors going, oh, market opportunity, sign Garnacho for 40 million. It's Enzo Maresca convincing him to join on multiple video calls. That's positive. It shows that the Chelsea manager is involved. He wanted Garnacho and indeed had tactical plans for him. He wasn't just lumbered with him like, here you go, have this player, make it work in your system. Maresca clearly desired the signing of Garnacho and when given the opportunity for these calls, had a pitch. Come join me. And I do think actually the long-term plan is to start Garnacho as Chelsea's left winger. Of course, he scored on his first Chelsea goal the other day in what was a miserable result at Stamford Bridge. You can't, say anything else against Sunderland. We do know something about Maresca. There'll be a lot of rotation, so we will see the likes of Jamie Gittins. Of course, we're playing Wolves tomorrow evening. We could speak a little bit about that in a bit. But ultimately, I see why Chelsea prioritised a £40 million Alejandro Garnacho that the manager was seemingly interested in and, calling up, rather than an 80 to £100 million Morgan Rodgers, even though I would have preferred him at the time. I don't manage Chelsea, so there we go. Let me know your thoughts. Let's move on, and let's speak a little bit about Thiago Silva. Now, Cy Phillips, who has good Chelsea connections, wrote the following on his Substack. Thiago has everything in place to go into coaching when he retires from the game, and I've even heard for some time that Chelsea may have a coaching position available for him to start that journey. We have to watch this space on that one, but he wants to get into management and will begin the next chapter soon. I'm starting that off the Chelsea Chronicle, and of course that's referencing Cy Phillips on his Substack. Now, Simon's got good information. He knows a lot. He's got, links to Chelsea, I suppose. So it's an interesting reference there. Thiago Silva is, 41 now? He will retire soon. It'll be very interesting to see if he comes into the Chelsea coaching staff. Of course, we've already got Willy Caballero, who played for Chelsea. We've often got, some players that have played for Chelsea on coaching staff, whether it's Lampard's gang or Zola. Do you remember Zola was the assistant for Maurizio Sarri? That's very easy to forget, isn't it? It will be very interesting to see if Thiago Silva comes back. I assume if he comes into a coaching role, he will probably coach maybe youth level. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe he comes in as an assistant because, let's be honest, if we need a senior voice like that in the dressing room. Of course, I know Thiago Silva speaks fluent Italian, Brazilian, Portuguese, and French from his time at PSG. He speaks limited English. I wonder if he speaks Spanish. I know a lot of Portuguese speakers speak Spanish. Maybe you could speak to Enzo Maresca. I think, they just could speak Italian. Everyone speaks loads of different languages. I wonder if there'd be a benefit for Thiago Silva to come into Maresca's coaching staff. So look, I know some of these players here in your team. We'll know Enzo Fernandez and Reece James and stuff like that. He says, I can come in, I can, be a good voice in the dressing room, sort this defence out. I would welcome it personally. Of course, we don't know what's happening. This is, of course, Cy just speaking, saying the club really likes him, the door is open. It'd be very interesting, and I certainly would endorse the move. A lot of Chelsea fans are speaking about other, coaches at the moment. Enzo Maresca, I think his job is safe for now. It's certainly till the end of the season, until this 2-year valuation. Assessment, not valuation. Maybe it's a type of valuation. At the end of his first 2 years, they'll look at it. I wonder after the first 2 years as well, if they sack him, they don't have to pay massive severance if there's something, in the contract. Who knows? But, I think broadly they're happy with him. Of course, you don't want to be losing 2-1 to Sunderland at home. But, ultimately they'll do an assessment at the end of the season. A lot of Chelsea fans are talking about other coaches, of course. People are talking about Andoni right over there, Marco Silva, other sort of trendy sort of coaches. I think there'd be a big chance in the future, depending on how he trends and continues. Liam Rosenior, of course, the young English Strasbourg coach. I've heard him speak. He's very impressive, actually, when he speaks about football and, managing personalities and young men. I wonder if they're, how, tactically innovative he is ultimately. But I reckon he'll be earmarked for a future Chelsea manager. And of course, Cesc Fabregas having a wicked time at Como. He'd be a hipster's choice because he's managing Como, which is beautiful Italian place by the lake. They're playing above themselves. They're in a big investment, interesting project. And Cesc was such an amazing cultured footballer, and he's had the best footballing education from, you know, Wenger at Arsenal to Barcelona loads to different iterations of Chelsea, winning, you know, multiple Premier Leagues of Chelsea, you know, winning with his national team and high profile assists. Like, he's a bit of a superstar, Cesc. Interesting. Look, I'm not trying to sack the Chelsea manager, it's just an interesting talking point. Right, we are playing Wolves. I'm just going to speak very briefly on that and end the video on this. I'm going to just talk to you guys casually about what I think the lineup would be. As much as I'd like, you know, to see Shim and some other young players, I do think we're going to have to go relatively strong. Now, Wolves are having a terrible time at the moment, but we are going away from home. It's under the lights, and anything could happen. And we've just lost to Sunderland at home. We need to be very, very careful here. I do wonder if we'll see, you know, people like Malo Gusto come back in. I personally wouldn't bring Jorgensen in because I watched him play against Lincoln. I mean, he will play, won't he? He'll simply play. There's no way of going around that. It will be a story if he doesn't play, which Chelsea will be trying to avoid. So let's just say it will be Jorgensen in goal, Malo Gusto. I think it will probably be Wesley Fofana and maybe, I don't know, maybe Joshua Champong or something like that. Could be another defender. In terms of a left back, oh no, yeah, would it be Hato as a left back? No, let's go Cucurella left back, Gusto right back, and then Fofana and Hato at centre backs. Why not play a partnership together that have never played together? Because that always works, right? Fear. You know, Santos, Lavia, midfield. I do think it'll be heavy rotation, but it'll be very interesting because what if Wolves go full strength just because they need a good feeling? You know, Vitor Pereira might be sacked soon. What if he gets a good win against Chelsea and goes strong, then, you know, everything's good again. So maybe Caicedo's forced to play. I don't think Delap will start. I'd love for him to get like 60 minutes out of nowhere so he's ready for Spurs, but I think he's more likely to get 30 minutes or 20 minutes in the second half. So I think you'll probably see Mark Gue start again, you know, Joao, Pedro dropped, Tyreek George starting on the wing, Gittin starting on the wing, stuff like that. Look, still really strong players. It's going to be up to Maresca to get in their heads and be like, take this absolutely seriously, play for your lives, yeah, show Wagwan, because this would be a disaster should we lose. Chelsea might ultimately go, oh, it's just another, you know, competition. We don't need fixture congestion. We can put all our attention into the Champions League and, you know, nah. Win a cup. Go and win a cup for me. I think it's going to be, and hopefully it could be just platonic with a slightly rotated side. A big win, but you just don't know, do you? Let me know what you think though. Comment down below. Thank you again for supporting my content here on YouTube by liking, commenting, subscribing, hyping the video, all that stuff. I'm very grateful, and I do hope to see you back here, because I'm here every day. Yeah? Right. Take care of yourselves. Peace.
You ain't so tough with that bad boy tuck. I'ma get it how I'm living, I'ma walk the walk. Outline my lines, I rap through thought. Body bag the verse, outlined in chalk. In my life seen trouble, hustle on the double, silence on the trigger like my pick got a muzzle. Yo, chick like to guzzle, bad boy stay in trouble. I only love this paper, sorry I don't. I laugh me, bitch.